So cool. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Experian Weekly Data Talk, a show where we talk with data science leaders from around the world. We have Jordan Morrow. He's the global head of data literacy at Click, and Paul Malyon. He's the head of thought leadership and data literacy at Experian. How's it going, guys?
Going well.
Yeah,
Awesome.
great. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. So this is a really special chat. One, because it's the first time we've had two guests in our data talk. And second, it's about data literacy, which I'm very passionate about. And for those that have been following the podcast, I mean, essentially the Data Talk show is about data literacy. We talk with data scientists, we talk with people who are passionate about helping their organizations use data better, and certainly helping employees and just people who are not even in data science like myself get educated on how data can help improve our own business practices is really important to me. So I'm very passionate about the topic. I am hearing a little bit of an echo on my side. I apologize. It's possible to turn down the volume just a little bit. There we go. That's much, much better. Thank you so much. So before we get started, I'd like to just do some quick introductions. We'll start with Jordan. Jordan, kind of share a little bit about your background and how you got started with data literacy.
Yeah, you bet. So Jordan Morrow, I'm the global head of data literacy here at Click. How I got started with it, wow, I'm a big nerd. My passion, mathematics, data, analytics, I love everything nerdy like that. And a few years ago, I've been on this journey of data literacy for a few years now. I just had an idea that we need to teach people how to do analytics better. We keep democratizing data, we keep putting it into the hands of the masses, but masses are not ready to do it. Most of them are not statisticians, they're not data scientists. In fact, I would say 99.9% of the world is not at that level. And so I thought, well, let's teach the masses how to use data. And that's what data literacy is. And so when I started on it, we didn't even call it data literacy. We called it many different things. We're just very glad that the industry agreed with this theory and thought process that we had.
Yeah, because it's so needed. I mean, Jordan, like I was sharing in the beginning, I don't have that background. I don't have an analytics background, a data science background. When I was in college, I stayed clear of any sort of math buildings, science buildings. I was always in the English lit, Latin, buildings. Yeah. But then when I started working at an analytics company, a lot of our reporting, everything that we do needs to be based on data. We make data-driven decisions. So in my social media work, I have to look at, what social media sites should we be on? What does the data say? And especially as we move more into this age of artificial intelligence and machine learning, using bots and voice assistants, learning how to use data is important for all of us. So I'm very excited to see that you've gotten into this field. And I feel like this is an emerging field, would you say?
It is, yeah. We've seen it, like I said, when I started on this a few years ago, we called it data literacy. We called it data and analytical literacy. We called it a few things, because it was very new. It wasn't anything that organizations had seen yet or done. But now, and I would say about the last year to year and a half, everyone is talking about it, because I think they realized that, we keep saying data science. No one's ready for that, especially when the masses don't want to go back to school to be a data scientist. And so they finally realized we should be empowering the masses and not worrying about, and let me rephrase that. They should still be worried about data science because it has power. But they started to worry that we're trying to democratize and give people access to data. And when we've done that, they're not ready and they're not achieving value from those investments because of it.
Yeah. Are you noticing, because the term global head of data literacy, I think that's a super important title that a lot of companies should have. Are you noticing more companies adopting those types of roles or?
Yeah, so what I'm seeing mainly, the number one, I would say, executive position that's growing over the last year to 3 years, I would say, is that of the chief data officer or the chief analytics officer. And one interesting little anecdote on the chief data officer, the average age demographic of a chief data officer is under 40 years old.
Oh, wow.
When you think about, and I think that's because that generation is more inundated with technology and the need to be able to use data. STEM education became really big, and so that age demographic is younger and has more power. But I am seeing the growth of the CDO all over the place. I'm seeing more investments in the people side of things, which I think is good. Historically, everybody, I think, was investing in technology and software, thinking it was that magic bullet that was going to solve everything, only to find out it didn't work, and then they blamed the software. Well, in reality, most of the time the software was probably great. It was the human side that wasn't great. And so now they're like, well, we need someone to lead that charge. So those are the VPs, the senior vice presidents, the CDOs, and then now they're empowering the masses with data literacy.
Jordan, do you find that the CDO is usually the person that's driving data literacy in the organization? Like the CDO would hire someone like you to then help to educate employees?
Yeah, well, so my position, a little clarification on mine, I'm global head of data literacy, but most of my work is outside of Click. I'm focused on helping organizations around the world. That's what my education program does. What I find at organizations is, yes, the executive suite should be the group that's leading the charge on data literacy, analytical strategy, et cetera. Whether you have a CDO or not, it should be up at that level. And then you get the buy-in from leaders within the data and analytics world. And that's where I come in, kind of as an advisor to those companies. I'll go in and talk to them about data literacy, helping them to implement a strategy or what they need to do to become more data literate so that they can achieve that return on investment they want to see with analytics.
Okay, that's excellent. I wasn't sure how that worked. Thank you so much for
yeah. So it's kind of interesting. I think some people think global head of data literacy means I'm working internally on data literacy, when in fact, yes, I do try and push data literacy at my company, but 99.9% of my time is I'm out in the world helping organizations, whether I'm traveling or speaking or whatever it is, helping them do it. Click took a shot on me, which was a big one because I'm product agnostic. I don't do anything with our software. And they hired me to build an education program to train people on how to use data. And so Click became a world leader in data literacy from the sheer fact that we took a shot. And then from there, like I said, I'm glad the stars aligned and the industry liked what we were doing. And so I'm invited all over the world. That's how we got Paul involved with the data literacy project, is we created that and wanted to get like-minded people where, again, I don't do anything with the product, which is kind of odd. I have no financial targets. I have no revenue targets. I have none of that. My job is truly to help organizations and people around the world to succeed with data.
Well, that's brilliant. And what great timing. This is like the perfect time in our market for people to be educated about data. Yep. And so the timing couldn't be better. And it leads to Paul. So Paul, when you emailed me, I was like super excited when you reached out because I had no idea that we had a strong push at the global level for data literacy. I knew that we did it. I just wasn't sure like who was doing it. And when I got an email from you, I was super excited to learn about the work that you were doing. So can you share, Paul, a little bit about your background, how you got into this role, and some of the work you're doing right now?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, it's very much stars aligning. So my role within Experian, I've been with the business in a range of roles for about 8 to 9 years. My background is product management, always about the data though, rather than our software. So my job has always been about making sense of data, telling the story. What are the benefits of this data? How can it help individuals and businesses? And over the years, I've held a number of roles looking at different forms of data within Experian before becoming a data strategy manager. So thinking more about the holistic view. So what can businesses do within data management and data governance to get more from their data, to be compliant, to help customers, to help their own organization. And over that time, we've definitely seen this need from organizations for more kind of consultancy-based support around, what are we trying to do with our data program here? Why are we doing this? Rather than just pounds and pence, what are the benefits we can give out to our customers? And I mean, we recently here in the UK and Ireland rejigged our organization to put in place a chief data officer. And that has led on to my new role, head of thought leadership and data literacy. So my role is both internal and external. I'm responsible for our internal data literacy program, and we thank the data literacy project for inspiring the name behind that, because before it was simply data training. Now it is data literacy. And also I'm, with my thought leadership hat on, looking at how we can help both individuals and businesses become more data literate. In the past, Experian have done a lot of work around financial education and financial literacy, but we think there's more we can do. We think that understanding how your credit score works and how financial data works is great, But we think there's more that people need in the modern world. They need to understand all of the forms of data that help them in their day-to-day life, whether that be school results to understand where they should move for the best education for their kids, through to choices around healthcare, around where they should work, around transport. All of this is based upon data, and we're really passionate to help people understand how to make sense of that data and how to also demystify some of the assumptions that are made as well. As Jordan said, I'm happily involved alongside the rest of Experian with the data literacy project. And yeah, it came at a great time as we were refreshing our internal program and looking at how we could do more externally. Folks from the data literacy project came along and gave us really a kind of central fulcrum to pivot from that great work.
That's awesome. For those listening to the podcast, check out the dataliteracyproject.org. You can Google it or just type in the dataliteracyproject.org. Paul, can you share a little bit more about this project and what is the mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So research conducted by the Data Literacy Project found that there are severe issues with data literacy. For example, only 24% of business decision makers are data literate, and only 32% of executives. And most frighteningly, and that's where this really becomes a problem for businesses, only 21% of 16 to 24-year-olds would class themselves as data literate. Now, with the rise of things...
I'm sorry, Paul, what does that mean? When somebody says I'm data literate or I'm not sure I'm data literate, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, so that's really the ability to work with data, to analyze it, to question it, to challenge data. So instead of seeing information in front of you and just accepting it, actually, where has that statement come from? Can I look into the data behind that and understand where the data was gathered, how it's been analyzed, and the assumptions made from that analysis? So to give a good example, we're all good at catching the bus to work, but actually, if I look at the timetable data, how long is it going to take me to get from A to B? And are there any potential ways I can save time by changing to another bus route? Instead of just taking the timetable as gospel, let's look at that and actually understand whether the bus is likely to be on time. Compare that with other data on traffic patterns and actually really get a good view of my chance of getting to work on time. So it's this kind of questioning ability. And yes, it can go as far as being an analyst and a data scientist and understanding R and Python, which I definitely don't. But for the kind of the rest of us, the major number of us in the world, being able to question, challenge, and use data and be confident and not be scared when you see statistics and percentages and things like that. So there is a link back to kind of general maths literacy, so numeracy, and also that kind of questioning ability that sometimes people lose or don't get educated if they don't have a STEM background. So as the research found, there is a serious problem, and with the push towards kind of analytics and artificial intelligence, businesses are really beginning to lack people with those basic kind of analytical and questioning skills, and that's becoming a severe issue. The research that the Data Literacy Project conducted also created an index that showed that organizations that are data literate, so do put data at the center of their organization, tend to have a larger enterprise value, so share price, if you will, of between 3 and 5%. For a large organization, that's worth about $500 million. So there's money to be made in data. We all know that from the rise of big data. But actually, it's not just about analyzing our data and using machine learning. It's about the skills and the people. If we've got the people who can question that data and understand it and think about the implications, they can then innovate using that data and really push our businesses onto the next level. And there's a whole bunch of societal benefits as well to come from that.
Jordan, bringing on a big project to a company is a lot of work. There's a lot of challenges involved. Yeah. And then the bigger the company, the more complex it gets.
Yep.
A data literacy project, I imagine, has a lot of complications, a lot of challenges. Can you talk a little bit about those challenges and how does a senior leader overcome that? Because I imagine like people listening in would be like, yeah, this is super important. We need to make sure that our employees are educated. Like the more educated they are on using data analytics, will just improve our company overall. Yes, we need to do this, but how do I do it? Like, what are the steps I need to take to actually implement a program like this?
Yeah, it's interesting. And these are some of the things I get. And what you'd find from a hurdle or kind of roadblock perspective is it's not going to be the things that one would normally think. And maybe they would, but normally the number one hurdle or problem that I see is culture. And the reason I say it's culture is because you're right. Every organization, every speaking event, anything that I've done around the world, I have never had someone say, I disagree with you. We don't need to make people data literate. Everybody wants to do it. And for those that don't think they have to do it, I feel bad because their companies are going to go down against those that do it. But the number one hurdle isn't technology. It isn't a desire to learn or anything. It's the fact that the culture is not ready for it. Or the culture, they think that you need to do a full culture change. And so when I go around, I don't talk about a culture change in any way. I talk about a culture evolution. Because the moment you talk to an organization and say, we're going to change your culture, people laugh at you because they know how hard that's going to be. And so what I tell them is we need to weave the DNA of data through your existing culture to get away from the old way of doing things that might only be off of gut feel or the human instinct, and just combine it with data. It's not even truly a massive change to just, look, have your ideas, combine the human element with the data element, and that'll work. And that's the biggest hurdle right there is it's not technology, it's not this or that, it's the fact they just don't know where to start. And so I always tell them, start where you are. We're not here to change everything about you. And so it all starts then. The second thing that needs to happen is I don't like if an organization says, all right, we're going to send out an email to the entire company and make this mandatory training. Now, how many of us like to get an email that says you have mandatory training in your inbox?
Right.
Nobody, right? People click through it. It's done in 5 minutes and there's no value. And so I tell organizations, I don't want you to say a darn word to your organization about training. I want you to send out an email that describes basically what Paul just said, the why behind data literacy. There's a large skills gap. For large companies, it's a potential of $500 million worth of value to you. It's the ability to make data-informed decisions. So those are probably the two biggest hindrances. It's the culture, they don't know where to start. Because once the journey begins and you get people involved, starting the discussion around the human element, right? It's not the technology, right? A lot of times organizations, and Paul nailed it on the head when he said big data, organizations are hearing the hype of everything. They're hearing the hype of big data. They hear the hype of technology. They hear the hype of AI. And they're not even prepared to do descriptive analytics, which is the base level, but they're throwing all this money at predictive analytics, which is what the world is talking about. There are very few companies that are ready to do that. That's another big hurdle is they all think they need to be doing AI and all of this. Well, there are 4 levels of analytics: descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, prescriptive. People are trying to jump to that 3rd level before even being able to do descriptive well. And I have not come across many, if any, organizations that are really good at diagnostic analytics, which is, the way I describe it is, observations are descriptive analytics. Diagnostic analytics is insights. And insights are what are needed to make data-informed decisions. I can't tell you how many organizations that I've been to, none of them have been at that level where they can do those 2 things well. But guess where the money is going? They're investing in AI and all these things. Go ahead and do that, democratize your data, and then watch. You're not going to get the return on investment you want. So that would be the 3rd problem, is investing in things that should not be invested in right off the bat. The human element should be invested in, number 1, because if you empower everybody, like Paul is saying, with skills to consume data effectively, then things will fall into place on your data and analytical journeys and strategies. But the moment you're investing into software before people, more power to you. It's not going to work the way you think it is. I have not found one case or instance where an organization has invested all this money in big data and they're all super satisfied with their data strategy. I just don't see it. Now, there are a few companies, and these are the ones you would think of: Google, Facebook, Amazon. Well, guess when they were born and bred? In the digital era, with data, with technology, and with data literate people. But now go to your mom and pop shop that is around the corner that is being inundated and told they need data and analytics. Go to your mid-sized companies and then go to your large companies. The sheer fact that most of the time they're investing in software instead of the human element, that right there is the biggest no-no that I would say throughout all of this.
No doubt. Paul, can you talk a little bit about that human element and how does a company begin to evolve its culture to grow and the desire to be more data driven?
Yeah, I guess that's always the difficult thing. Evolving a culture requires people to want to evolve and recognize that there is a benefit for them. And you're always going to get different levels within an organization. Some people who are passionate and want to either do this to improve their career prospects or improve their family life. You'll have the others who come to work at 9 o'clock on a Monday, switch on, go home at 5 o'clock on a Friday and switch off. And that's fine. And it is difficult to find something that's going to appeal to all of them. And that's the journey I'm going on at the moment. Happily, I work in a relatively data literate, relatively data enthused company. And we are refreshing our data training to really look at data literacy as a kind of larger skill set. Yeah. And what we're looking at is how we can not just train our people on the data that's important to us, and we absolutely understand that everyone in Experian should understand how we work with data, why we keep it so secure, why we take compliance so seriously, but also what can we do to bring data to life? How can we tell stories and give people the opportunity to engage with data in different ways? And this is where the personal experience becomes so important. And right through my career as a product manager, it was always those personal stories when I was talking to a customer that really brought home the value of my product. So if I take data literacy as a good example, can I use some of the open data that's out there to maybe go into my child's school? Can I use that to run a session with those children to help them understand, for example, the green spaces that are around them? Can we use that to help them find opportunities to get fitter and healthier, spend less time on their screens? All of this kind of stuff. How can we bring it home and relate the data to the real world problem? And that's how we're looking at making this journey accessible for everyone, regardless of their kind of skill level in the technology side of things or their kind of general passion. Everyone's got a passion for something. And, I'm a data person. At the end of the day, everything does end up back at data. So we just need to find that link.
Paul, what's your message to people who feel that their role doesn't require them to be data literate?
I'd ask them to check again. If you're in finance, do you need to look at sales figures? If you're in sales, do you need to look at the marketing figures and work out where your marketing spend is working the best? If you're in facilities, how many people are sitting in your office? How much electricity are they consuming? How many cans of Diet Coke are they consuming? Everything eventually runs back to data. And if we can't use the data that's at our fingertips, decisions we make are going to be questionable. We've mentioned analytics several times, and in my work helping organizations with their data management strategies, we see so many embarking on analytics without first thinking about what is the data we've got? What are we trying to do? Let's take a step back and think about what's the aim of our business? What are we trying to do to help our customers? And there is always that human element that people need to think about and try and forget the data for a moment, and eventually the data will come back into that discussion.
Yeah, Jordan, I love that you have been investing yourself into helping the leader of an organization begin to evolve culture to be more data-driven. But also, I'm thinking about the responsibility of employees. Yeah. That we all need to be doing our own work to make sure that we are keeping up, that we are doing our best for our companies, that we are evolving, that we have a desire to change and grow as well. What's your message for those of us out there that maybe we've never thought about the importance of being data literate, but listening to you, I'm like, yeah, I really need to brush up on my skills. I really need to start making an impact in this area. What's your advice for employees that are maybe they're in an organization that the organization is not, they don't have senior leaders saying you need to be data driven, get educated. There isn't that message coming from the top. Yeah. But they want to improve their own data literacy.
Yeah. Well, I would say right off the bat, the first thing this is a phrase I've been saying for a long time now is not everyone needs to be a data scientist, but everyone needs to be data literate. So I want the masses to understand, don't be focused on data science. Like, get that out of your mind. That's not where you want to start. That's not where you want to begin. And in fact, the way I describe it is I call them the 2 C's of data literacy, because you're right. Organizations as a whole need to embrace this, and then each individual needs to be taking these things on themselves, not only, as Paul said, for their career, but your personal life uses data all the time. And I describe it as the 2 C's of data literacy, and you're going to find it has nothing to do with statistics, math, or anything. It's the first one is curiosity. We need to develop more curiosity, this desire to learn as much as possible. One of my favorite people in the world is Neil deGrasse Tyson, the astrophysicist. And he describes it, right? Like, why do we lose this desire to learn? Like, I have 5 children, so I've got a lot of kids. And they are always asking questions, always. They want to know everything. And sometimes, I'm not going to lie, it gets annoying, right? And I think every parent would say that, right? You're tired. But the reality is they are curious beyond curious, just to figure everything out and learn. But for whatever reason, as soon as we leave university, where we're asking questions all the time to learn, and we enter our career, our curiosity leaves us. We don't ask questions anymore. We need to get back to curiosity. Ask questions of your data all the time. Ask questions of projects. Ask questions of visualizations. Ask, why in the world are we doing this? And if you do that, that's step one. That you're going to get beyond anything. This is the analytics. You're going to analyze things to figure it out. And then the second C of the second C of data literacy is creativity. The fact of the matter is, I think some people in the world are fearful that the advent of data, AI, and all these things are going to take over the human element. And that is a big no-no. And we've seen that if the data is driving things, it actually has bias, it has prejudice, it can be racist, it can have all these things that are built into the data. We need the human element. We need creativity. We need storytelling. We need the ability to share information in insightful ways. It's interesting how you said, you know, when you were at university, Mike, you were in the English and the lit classes. Well, guess what area is becoming a big growth area within data science? It is the arts, and it's those things, the humanities. Why? Because those individuals are better at telling stories. They're creative. They bring light to the data, right? Most people don't want to sit there and listen to an individual spout off statistical jargon and do all that. No, they want a story. In fact, McKinsey predicts in the United States alone by, I think it's 2026, 2 to 4 million jobs will be created in the world of data storytelling, essentially. The ability to bridge the gap between the business and data, because there's not a lot of people who can do that. But that's creativity. How are you going to bridge that without that human element? We can't lose sight of the human element. So those 2 things right there, if your company's not a part of it, invest your time in knowing how to ask good questions of data, and then finding creative ways to share the messages the data are showing. And then the third thing is, when you do that, create a grassroots movement, right? I mean, the reality is, if your executives don't think you need this, either 1, create the grassroots movement, or 2, run for the hills and find a new company, because organizations that are not going to be investing in data initiatives and in the digital world are going to be bypassed very quickly by those. And there are examples all over the place of where this has happened. And that's the reality. So create the movement. And if you see that it's not going to happen, reach out to me and we'll help you find somewhere that does. So.
Well, Jordan, you just gave hope to all us English lit majors out there.
Absolutely. I love it.
Anybody in humanities.
I love it. The reality is, because you're right, I think there's a lot of fear in those positions that, look, everybody is pushing everyone to go to STEM education. And I push everyone to go that way because that's the future of it. But I also combine it with, if you're going to get, let's say, a major in mathematics, get a minor in art history, get a minor in English literature. The combination of those 2 things, that is what employees need. We don't need mathematicians everywhere, because guess what? I'm a math geek, I'm a stats geek, but those meetings are going to be boring, and decision-making might not be the easiest. Combine it, and that's that key.
That's so cool. Paul, I got to tell you, Jordan, we have these hackathons here at Experian, and they're a chance for people from different business units to kind of come together and work on a challenge or work on a project together. And it starts with the being curious, asking questions. What are some business problems we have? And so we just had a hackathon here in Costa Mesa a couple weeks ago. And so I work on the social media team, and somebody on my team was like interested in joining it. And I was like, yeah, go for it. Like, please. Like, because those hackathons are meant for people from all different parts of the company to come together and work on a problem. So she joined the team, and she told me that afterwards, she said, I had no idea about the math side of it and the data side of it, but what I could contribute was the storytelling side.
Yes.
And so they had her work on the video project, the PowerPoint, developing the story, like the challenge and visualizing all of that.
Yeah.
So she worked on that. They won.
Yeah.
Like their team won the hackathon in part because of her storytelling. And like, just to your point, like you need somebody to come in to like take even though you may not understand all the details of the data science aspect, being able to take that and like, I can tell a story with this, that makes a really powerful impact.
Well, what's interesting is there's a study that was done, and I find it such a paradox because it's a study with statistics, but the study showed that people don't remember statistics, they remember stories. And I think the study showed there were these kids that had to share stories. And it was like 10% of the people remembered the statistics, but 90% of the people remembered the stories or something like that. A complete illustration of what you just described. Because if I were to rattle off 50 different numbers during this podcast, people aren't going to remember it. But if I share 3 or 4 stories about businesses that have done this, it's remembered. And that you're absolutely right. If that storytelling creativity is amazing because what it does is it brings to light numbers, and that's what we want.
Yeah, I think that speaks to like that curiosity, that drive that needs to continue, no matter if you have a background in humanities, like be curious about the numbers and how to get better at understanding numbers. If you're on the numbers side, be curious about the storytelling aspect. Like it goes both ways. Because having that combination, to your point, is like super powerful. It's very compelling.
Yeah, I completely agree. You can't. I think a lot of times when people think of data literacy, now it went the other way. Everyone was so focused on data science, the masses were forgotten. I don't want to see a paradigm shift where everybody's focused on data literacy and the data scientist is forgotten, because everyone is involved. The beginners need to learn data and analytics and just the ability to do something. On the flip side of it, the data scientist needs to learn how to communicate better. It is an overarching cultural evolution and paradigm shift, not one or the other. No, they need to go hand in hand.
Yeah, no doubt. Paul, can you talk a little bit about the culture here at Experian? Because I think there is a benefit for a lot of people here, because we do work at a data analytics company. So kind of in our DNA is like you're expected to like be able to, you're expected to be curious, you're expected to be creative. Those are all expected of you. But what are some areas you'd like to see Experian grow in?
Yeah, I think if I just reflect on my career within Experian, and even before that, I'm a geographer by trade. My degree was all around taking information and telling the story. Massive advert for geography, by the way. It's a good degree to do if you want to get into this space. And I ended up in product management, which sits like the kind of roles we're talking about here. It sits between sales and technology. A lot of my background was bringing those two areas together and helping them make sense of one another. And yeah, at Experian, I think we do a good job of kind of sitting across those two things. So we have our data labs and our data scientists doing really clever, amazing things. And we have our account managers and our customer-facing people on the other end understanding the challenges that businesses and people are facing. And in the middle, we have our product management folks and our engineers building the products that use the data or take the stories and create something that adds value and helps people solve problems. And I think we do a good job of that. I think we can always get better. I think the problem we have is a problem that many large organizations face, which is silos. Experian is an organization that's been made up of many constituent parts over the year. We've been very acquisitive. And I come from a part of the business originally that dealt with address and location data. My understanding of our credit scoring data is limited because I've never been exposed to it. So I could do with learning more about that. On the flip side, I'd love to go and train everyone around the rest of the business on how addresses are so important and why they're fundamental to everything we do. So we can always get better. And the challenge, as well as this kind of siloed nature, is just capacity. People have day jobs. They have a busy life. How do we find the time to increase their skills and engagement? And how, as Jordan said earlier, how can we avoid it becoming one of those other mandatory training things that we all roll our eyes at every year when they come round? So what we're really trying hard to do is create a program within our data literacy program here to engage people in different ways. So to make sure that the sessions are available in a way that different types of learning will benefit. So if you are more of the kind of humanities artistic side of things, let's give you something that's all about the story. and less about the statistics. And if you're on the data science end, let's maybe start with the technology side of things, but make sure we take you on that storytelling journey. So that's going to be a challenge, finding time in people's diaries to do that. And we need to make it engaging and valuable and interesting, and really appeal to that curiosity that everyone in Experian has at some level. So, we like any other business have got challenges, but I think we're coming from a decent base because we are a data business.
Yeah, Jordan, I want to talk to you about this challenges, especially the silo challenge, because I think that is, I've seen it in other companies I've been at. It's super common, right? You work at a certain part of the company, and that's your team. That's the people you're working with on a regular basis. And it's just natural to that's who you're going to stick with. It's not unless a company starting to do certain things to kind of shake up the organization, to kind of break things up, where other conversations, you start meeting other people. And I'll share a quick story. I think one of the big changes most recently here in North America has been the shift to start up all these different executive resource groups and clubs on campus. So, Jordan, we have game clubs. People that are into board games.
Yeah.
And so we had that board game Catan.
Oh yeah.
Settlers of Catan. So we had a game night here. And so we have all these clubs that have kind of broken out across the organization based on interest. We have I like to bike, so there's cycling club too. Mm-hmm. And these little clubs are amazing because they bring together people that normally wouldn't interact. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you're biking next to somebody who's working in an entirely different part of the business, and you're talking about what you do. And it's helping to break down barriers and bring people together. And it's been a super powerful way that I've seen, and those changes have happened just in the last 2 years. And they've been you wouldn't think that a club, a biking club or Settlers of Catan club would actually do that, but it's been amazing for culture. I'm curious about how you've dealt with this, or what you've seen companies do to help to break down silos.
Yeah, well, you're touching upon it. The reality is, with data and data silos, my experience would be that it's a lack of data literacy. And I know I'm the data literacy guy saying that, but that's truly what it is, because what ends up happening is a group is given a data project, and then they become very protective of that project. They don't know what data they can share. They don't know who can have access to the data. And instead of tying to an overarching program, they're tied to their own program, causing themselves to silo themselves out, because people have a lack of data literacy. So when they get access to this data and information, they don't know what to do with it. And so they're just focused, siloed, right? They've got the ton
of
it.
That's right.
My project.
Yep.
And when that happens all across. Now imagine, Experian's massive with the number of employees. Imagine another company just as big as Experian, and you have 50 different analytical projects happening all over the world. Those groups are focused on their one project. This is where, in my opinion, a CDO or a CAO is necessary.
Did you say CDO and
CDO is Chief Data Officer, or CAO is Chief Analytics Officer?
Oh, I never heard that term.
Yeah, so similar roles, right? Their focus is going to be the same. And what you need is that overarching vision where they set the tone across all those projects. Because what I've seen, so for me, I came from American Express before I came to Click. I was in charge of one business unit's entire BI strategy, basically.
Wow.
But what ended up happening, this was a few years ago when the democratization of data was really just getting going. And I applaud the president of the group because he had a vision to do it. But the problem lied that we would train everybody to use our dashboards. But so-and-so over here had a friend who knew coding and could just pull the data quickly for them. So they would reach out to that person and say, pull that for me. Well, guess what would happen? That person would pull that information based on their definition of that information, not the single source record. And so we have two numbers in the business going out everywhere. And you have executives reaching out to me saying, what happened? And I said, you're right. Go talk to this person. They did not come to us for the information. And then that person would get in trouble, or should get in trouble, for what they've done. And so, but that's the silo, is there was no overarching strategy throughout the company. Now, and I don't fault anybody at American Express for this, because at the time, this was in the early phases, we learned.
Well, and that's super easy to happen. I mean, if someone's going to one person for a report, someone going to that happens everywhere.
And
doesn't
that's
matter
siloed,
how great.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
That happens all the time.
Exactly. So to me, the two ways to get rid of it are one, hiring or having an executive CDO or CAO. The second, because they will drive that overall strategy. The second is empower everybody to be data literate. Because if you're data literate, you know there can't be silos, just naturally. You know a silo should not exist. You know how to question the data. You know when someone says, I pulled the data, you say, how? What definition did you use on that data? Does it match this person's over here? That's how this naturally is broken down. I see a lot of organizations trying to invest in software to get rid of a silo. But all you're doing is going to create another silo for those that are invested in that software. It's the empowerment of the person, not technology, that's going to get rid of that software. And that includes the empowerment of an executive who is overarching all the strategies that are in place.
Jordan, that resonates with me. That happens. I see that happening all the time. Especially, like, I'll just give an example, just in my work in social media. So part of our job and our team is to do monitoring over keywords. So we monitor things that are important to our business.
Yeah.
And if I'm using a certain monitoring tool and someone else in a different department is using a different monitoring tool, it's not common. I mean, it's very common to have very different results because I might be looking at just US mentions. Someone else might be global mentions, right? And then there might be some different ways that it's looking at content. It might be looking at, this is looking at Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and the other person might be looking at all the web. And so depending on the inputs, the software you're using, what keywords you're tracking, you can get different data points. Super easy to happen, And
I think people get frustrated or they look for somewhere to put the blame. The reality is no one should be blaming anyone on this stuff. Data, if you look at the exponential growth of data and the rapid pace of change, it's not that someone is necessarily to blame, it's that nobody really knew, right? Nobody really had an understanding that this is what was going to happen. But we're at this paradigm shift, this evolution where we can now address it and we should be addressing it. And not fearfully. We should not be upset. We should not be mad. We should sit here and say, okay, we see what has happened. Let's do something about it. Not, we see what's happened, let's blame people, let's fire people, let's invest in more software. No, let's take a step back, get the CDO, the CAO in place, put them in charge of creating the strategy. Let's empower everybody with data literacy and watch these things melt away versus having these quick solutions. That's the other thing that I think is happening. People want quick, rapid answers. Data and analytics and statistics are not, hey, go conduct a large test and give me the result tomorrow. That's not how this works. People have to understand changes will take time. There'll be large changes, but they can happen if they're invested in properly.
Paul, can you share a little bit about you talked a little bit about the silos that are just so common across different organizations and maybe some different ways that employees can help to break down these silos, to have better communication. Because I think, no one wants to be double reporting or doing double analytics, and we all want to be working off the same numbers, and we want the organization to be successful, which means that we're using the right data and analyzing the right data. But like you mentioned, it's so easy for silos to form, which causes problems.
Yeah, it's a personal challenge that you have to take on. You have to look for those people in the other parts of the business that have similar roles to you. So again, taking my product management background, I would go and find other product managers in the business. What methodologies are you using? What tools are you using? Are you running waterfall or agile? Just have those kind of conversations about each other's jobs. What kinds of challenges you're facing, what are you looking after, and those things can help start to break down those silos. It's all down to the person. It's personal relationships. It's not something that can be mandated from above. You can't just be told from the bosses, go and break down the silos, because it doesn't work like that. It does take the people to go and do something. We've seen over the years that I've been here, opportunities for people to start coming together. So for example, we have product management forums, we have analytical forums, we have groups of people from across the business with similar roles who get together and discuss things, compare and contrast what they're working on and how they're working on it, and what tools and systems they're using. And ultimately, it does result in things such as, we're now going to use just this one system for tracking backlogs. We're going to use just this one system for analytics because we've seen best practice somewhere else and we've decided that's going to work for everyone. And hey, look, it's going to take some adjustment, but it's going to be ultimately better for everyone involved. And hey, being a Brit, these things often happen over beers, and that's usually the best way to get things done here.
Nice. Very cool. Well, Paul and Jordan, thank you so much for your time. Before we go, where can everyone learn more about, first of all, I'll talk to Jordan. Jordan, where can everyone learn more about you and the work that you're doing with Click?
Yeah, the big two websites are the one you mentioned earlier, just www.thedataliteracyproject.org. That's the independent community that we founded with Experian and Paul and a few other large or big companies in the data space. And then the second website would be click.com/getdataliterate. This is my education program. One thing that I made sure of, because I'm with Paul, that thought leadership is a big piece, that most of my stuff's free. So if you go to that click.com/getdataliterate, just start using the resources. And then me personally, I am an open book. Anybody can connect with me. You can find me at Jordan Morrow on LinkedIn or at analytics_time on Twitter. And those would be the places to connect with me.
Awesome. Paul, where can people get in touch with you?
Yes, so I'm on LinkedIn as well, Paul Malyon on LinkedIn. Thankfully, my name is rare, so there's not many of us out there. And you'll see more and more in the future on the Experian blog and the Experian website, so experian.com, around our work on data literacy and what we're doing to start fundamentally changing the way we discuss data with people out there.
Awesome. And for those that are on the Experian news blog, you can go to ex.pn/datatalk85. That's ex.pn/datatalk85. And I'll have links there to Paul and Jordan's LinkedIn profiles, as well as links to Click, and also some different resources that Jordan's developed, as well as the stuff that Paul's been working on, and places on Experian.com where you can learn more about the work that we do around data and analytics. Paul and Jordan, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.